We're going to skip past it for now and revisit it at the very end of the video, which means Wemby is now leaving the Lakers and taking his talents to South Beach. To pair up with Dwayne Wade, another star shooting guard who's without a doubt giving Wemby another chance at a championship. But that chance wouldn't be immediate, as D-Wade is only in his second year as a pro. He still has a ton of potential and one day he'll head to the Hall of Fame, but right now he's not ready and Wemby's still leading the team. Unfortunately for him though, he's now on the wrong side of 30 and is no longer averaging 30, as he's now down to 27 points per game, which are elite numbers, but not elite enough for the MVP. We might be at the point where Wemby starts to get phased out on all the MVPs and all that stuff. And as far as the playoffs go, let's just say it didn't go so well. But going into the 06 season, we would start to see the dynamic of the team and Wemby's career change as a whole. Because he's no longer the go-to option like he has been for basically his whole career, with the Heat putting the ball in D-Wade's hands as well. He's not as good as Kobe, but he's without a doubt a great pairing with Wemby, who's still putting up 23 per game. But in comparison, D-Wade would be averaging 30, which would ultimately win him his first MVP. Wemby has been the beneficiary of some really good teammates. But don't forget about the man himself, as he's still very good despite being age 33. And he would prove to be a great sidekick to Wade, as the two would blast Atlanta and Orlando to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. But standing in their way would be the Cleveland Cavaliers, led of course by LeBron James, who is really making Wemby seem old. It was over a decade ago when Wemby was in Orlando as a young star, challenging the veteran Michael Jordan. But now the roles have been reversed. Wemby's the vet and LeBron's the young star. But while Jordan's experience back then could be credited as the reason as to why he would outplay Wemby, it would also be reversed, as the youth of LeBron would be too much for Wemby's old legs. He's being sent home as LeBron's moving on. But Wemby's misfortune wouldn't end there. LeBron James is being crowned the future of the league, and the league is now looking for the next Victor Wembanyama. If he doesn't start to win soon, he's getting replaced. But in order to find some team success, Wemby might have to take another step back, as now at the age of 35, he's playing even more of a complementary role to Dwayne Wade, with his scoring going down yet again to just 20 per game. His sacrifice would be totally worth it though, as it's giving even more of a green light to D-Wade, who's carrying the team, winning his second MVP and leading the team to the first seed in the East. For the first time, it really does seem like the Heat are a true contender, and it's just in time as Wemby will be heading to another team next season, so while he's running out of time, he still has a solid shot at a title. All depending on his performance in the NBA Finals, which is the first in Miami Heat franchise history, where they'd have to take down the Rockets, who are led by Tracy McGrady and Yao Ming, one of the few players that can see eye to eye with Wemby. But unfortunately for him, height alone wouldn't be enough to stop the best sidekick in the league. And when you combine it with the performance of a two-time MVP, this one would be over quick.
The Miami Heat, they've done it! They win their first championship in franchise history!
As Wemby and the Heat have bounced back from last year's disappointment to now give Wemby 6 titles, which is 2 more than Shaq and the same as Jordan. It's been a while since he's been able to celebrate, but with the help of D-Wade, he's finally getting it done, which means he's now leaving the Heat for Shaq's next team on a very high note, as he's taking his talents to Phoenix to pair up with former MVP Steve Nash in the Suns. A dominant point guard who controls the game with his passing as opposed to his scoring, which actually helps out Wemby a ton, as he's maintaining his 20 points per game average all the way through his late 30s. On top of that, the Suns seem to be future contenders, as in the postseason, they'd make it all the way to the conference finals against Denver, who are of course led by Carmelo Anthony, but also Allen Iverson, a player who's been defeated by Wemby in the finals multiple times. But this time it seems to be different, as both AI and Carmelo would be able to force this series to Game 7 despite being the massive underdogs. And in that Game 7, which happens to be on Wemby's home court, the back and forth would continue. Both Victor and AI are on the last legs of their prime and are running out of time to add to their trophy cases. So it's no surprise that with the two playing so desperately, we'd see this one go down to the wire. But in the end, it would be the Suns and Wemby in control in the late moments of the game. One more free throw and they're moving on to the finals. 2-point game. If he hits this, they're in good shape. And Denver doesn't have a timeout, so here we go. Allen Iverson with a half-court shot. For a trip to the finals, he almost made it. It wasn't pretty and it almost ended really badly, but at the end of the day, the Suns are moving on to the finals after a hard-fought Game 7. But what you just saw wasn't a story of triumph. It was the last game of Wemby's prime. Because a few weeks later, he would fall short to the Boston Celtics in the finals, barely putting up a fight. And his downward spiral wouldn't end there, because now entering the 2009 season, we would see Wemby score a career-low 16.7 points per game. And if somehow you're still not convinced his prime is over, he would be sent home in the playoffs by the Rockets, the same team that he once beat in the finals. What seemed to be a promising tenure in Phoenix has ended as a disaster. So now entering the 2010 season, Wemby would get desperate, heading back east to join the Cleveland Cavaliers to pair up with LeBron James, now being the last player that he's forming a duo with. But duo might be a stretch as Wemby's scoring is dropping yet again down to 14 per game, which isn't horrible but obviously pales in comparison to LeBron's 30, as he's leading the Cavs to the top of the conference and finishing as the league MVP. Which on the bright side for Wemby would be the start of maybe the greatest carry job ever. Because the Charlotte Bobcats, the Miami Heat, and the Orlando Magic would be the first three victims of LeBron's most dominant season, with the Dallas Mavericks as the fourth. LeBron's bringing a title to Cleveland, but Wemby's got his seventh. And while yes, he basically didn't do anything, a few seasons ago he looked completely finished. So in a way, it's kind of an improvement. And he'll have one last opportunity to change history as we enter the 2011 season, which just so happens to be Shaq's last, meaning that it is also his last. Unfortunately for him though, he's pushing 40 and it's safe to say that at this point he's completely washed up. All he really does now is shoot threes, and if you give it 10 years he'll wind up being a meme. So while the Celtics would head to LA for the finals, Wemby would basically be an afterthought. Of course, he is returning to his old gym and playing against Kobe, but only at around 12 points per game. He's not even close to contributing enough to consider it a duel. So in the end, despite not doing much at all, Wemby would get carried to his 8th title, which obviously isn't that impressive, considering he was just lucky to be there thanks to Shaq. But before we watch him officially retire, we still have one more season to cover, as we're heading all the way back to his prime and the last season that he played with Kobe, because the two can win a title here that actually counts. And just as a reminder, the season prior, the two fell short of a four-peat at the hands of the San Antonio Spurs. So this season could be used as a form of redemption. And also as a reminder, we're not watching old man Wemby anymore. It's 2004 again, he's dominating, and at this point he was arguably the best player in the league. All starting with 31 points, scoring both inside and out, as well as 14 boards, 7 assists per game, with plenty going to Kobe, and a 72-win season, which can only mean that Wemby is now adding his 3rd MVP to his trophy case, with his 9th NBA championship in his sights. Throughout 2 decades in the league, we've seen Wemby battle it out with Michael Jordan, bring the first ever title to Miami, tag along for titles in both Cleveland and Boston, but with 3 championships, there's no doubt that his career will be defined and most remembered for his time in LA. And now 4 games away from yet another NBA title, there's only one thing left to do. Victor Wembanyama is finishing with 9 total championships, and when you combine it with 3 MVPs, 5 Finals MVPs, plenty of Defensive Player of the Years, and a handful of other awards, it's safe to say that in Shaq's shoes, he's had a GOAT-level career that'll definitely be hard to beat. But there are 2 players that might be able to surpass him, and it just so happens to be 2 of his greatest teammates. If LeBron and Kobe teamed up, could they win more than Wemby's 9 titles? To find out the answer to that question, click the video on the screen.